Good morning. This is Charlie Cradville, New Brunswick Today, alongside Mayor Jim Cahill. I want to start by talking about the presidential election last night. Was the first in the nation caucus.
Yes, it was.
Do you have a reaction? Do you have somebody you're supporting? You've been...
Well, I've been a Clinton fan for a very long period of time, both Bill and Hillary. It's interesting to see the rise of the senator, and he has done a great job of invoking new ways of looking at things, and I think it's good for the Democratic Party, and I think thus it's good for the nation to have these kind of dialogues and to take a look at things. So I'm keeping my powder dry. I lean towards Clinton because I do have a great deal of respect for her capability. But I think Sanders is an intriguing candidate. On the Republican side, in many ways, it looks like a lot of them can't get out of their own way. And I think that may just simply be the number of candidates that are out there, and each of them trying to distinguish themselves in some way, particularly with a media lightning rod like Donald Trump getting a lot of attention, and when you're sharing the stage literally and figuratively with 10 or 12 other people, you're trying to figure out a way that you can be seen and heard, and that your message, resonates with people. So I think as the Republican Party's herd starts to thin, I think you'll see the emergence of some clear voices as to what's going on.
Sure. So you've actually been mayor for 7 terms now. You were in office for President Clinton's whole term. What was your experience there? Did you thought he was a good president?
Oh, he's a great president.
Yeah.
The country was in great shape. We weren't at war. The economy was never better. We were not running the country at a deficit. Economy was good. And there was real efforts to improve the quality of life for middle class and those that are underserved in the country. So I would suggest that during the Clinton administration, the Bill Clinton administration, that the country was in great shape.
So 7 terms, you're a year and a half, or about a year and a half into your 7th term. Have you thought about, are you going to run for an 8th term?
It's way too early for that.
But you would consider it. You're not done yet.
It's way too early to that. Charlie, I expect to do the same thing that I've done in all the other times. It's hard enough to be mayor and to focus on the day-to-day things that you need to focus on. The things in government and politics change rapidly. So for me to measure whether I'm going to do something or not 2.5 years from now, when a real decision needs to be made, would be an unnecessary waste of time.
Okay, fair enough. So you're a lifelong resident. You grew up actually in Schwartz Homes was one of the places you lived, right?
Yep.
Tell me about that. What was it like growing up there? I mean,
Don't remember much.
Okay.
I moved there when I was moved from there. That's where I first lived. I lived there until I was about 2 years old. So I don't have much of a recollection.
Okay. But you recall growing up that public housing in New Brunswick was, a safe and good place for kids to grow up?
I don't remember anything to the contrary. But then again, at the age of 2, we don't remember very much about,
of course,
what the conditions were like at the time.
So tell me about today. The Housing Authority runs 3 different, housing facilities in the city. One of them is really big, Schwartz Robeson, of course. Do you think that that's a safe area to raise kids, or that the quality of the housing there is at standards or better?
Like all housing complexes, there are instances where something could be better, but on a par, I think that the vast majority of units at Schwartz Roberson are in good shape. They've spent a considerable amount of money over the past 5 to 10 years in rehabbing all the units. I think that on balance, it's in pretty decent shape.
Okay. I wanted to ask about some of the attorneys that work for you in City Hall. There've been, their pensions have been challenged. Do you know if there's been an outcome yet? Have the pension board determined whether these folks belong in the PERS system or not?
I don't know if there's been final decisions made.
Okay. Why do you think the pension board has decided to take that stance to challenge their pensions?
I think they're following a lead from the governor that was looking to clamp down on pension or to implement pension reform, and that if there were instances or opportunities for them to challenge, that they would do so.
Okay. I know that basically the last 4 police directors have all gotten jobs in the city after working for the police, and that enables them to collect their pension and
Sure.
And a public salary at the same time. Can you tell me why did, like for instance, Peter Mangarella, why did he take that director job and then only last, I guess, 15 months before he quit?
That's a question better posed to Pete Mangarella, but I think Pete put in his time and enjoyed the job. Being director can be difficult at times and very challenging, and I think Pete felt that he ran the course as long as he wanted to and called it a day.
But then he wanted to get another job almost right away, and the school board hired him to be the security person.
That's correct.
So he just had enough of the police work and wanted to switch to another type of job, I guess?
That's what it appears to be.
Okay. So to be clear, there was an allegation of racism, that he used a term, a slur.
That's correct.
Was that brought to your attention before Pete Mangarella resigned?
Charlie, that's a matter of litigation right now, so I'm not going to comment on it because there's a pending case that deals exactly with that. So I'll reserve my testimony and comments for the court case.
Okay. Which case is that?
I believe the plaintiff is Steve Middleton.
Okay. Okay, so that's the topic of litigation. But still, so there was an allegation. Do you know if the school board investigated that allegation before they hired him?
The question better posed to the school board.
Okay. Tell me about former director Catanese. He's recently been rehired by the city.
He's an assistant city attorney. Yeah.
Your old job.
Well, in some respects, same title. His role is somewhat limited for the time being.
Okay. So can you tell me about why he was hired?
Well, very hardworking guy, very bright, did a great job as police director, very good lawyer, and we needed to get greater support in the city attorney's office to handle an increased number of Oprah requests that were taking up a significant amount of time from T.K. Shammy, who's taken on the responsibilities as city attorney. So rather than detract from the other responsibilities that TK has, I thought it best to bring on Joe Catanese to handle those responsibilities. And Joe has some familiarity, actually quite a bit of familiarity with it from his days as police director. So it's a good combination, Oprah law, and it seemed to be a good combination and experience.
Okay. Was there any reason the city didn't announce this, the hiring?
No.
No. Just Assistant City Attorney doesn't rise to that level, where you would announce?
I think it's a $25,000 expenditure out of an $85 million budget. I would say, yes, it didn't seem to rise to the level of an announcement.
Okay. And so, that, of course, enables him to collect the pension at the same time as his salary. We talked about this before. You think that's just comes with the territory? That's how it should be?
No, I'm not saying that's how it should be, and nor am I saying that that comes with the territory. In any instance where you hire someone, you hire somebody that can fit the bill, that can meet the needs that you have for a particular job. In this instance, you have highly qualified, if you lump the police directors together, you have highly qualified individuals who have run a very sophisticated organization such as a police department, in charge of some, at any given time, 130 to 150 men and women in high-pressure situations. And if you can get their talents for another position, that their skills and experience are readily adaptable, I think you're foolish if you don't take advantage of that. In other instances, it also is a cost savings measure. So if you can get those individuals for even less salary, because they're not dependent upon the income that they would otherwise need because of their pension, it can be a financial benefit to the taxpayers of New Brunswick.
Understood. So with the Joseph Catanese situation specifically, do you think there's any problem with the fact that his boss is his law partner, T.K. Shammy? They have a firm together?
No, I don't see that as a problem. I mean, if you're the boss of somebody in one situation, what difference would it make if you're the boss of somebody in this different situation?
But I mean, but you're not the boss. Is T.K. Shammy the boss of Joseph Catanese at the law firm? I believe Joseph Catanese is the of counsel. Does that make one of them the boss, or does that make them partners?
One is the managing or a partner, and the partners are generally the owners of the business. So of counsel means, generally the way I understand it, would be that whatever it is they do has to meet with the approval of the partner.
The managing partner. Okay.
I'm not sure he's the managing partner, but he is a partner.
Gotcha. Okay. And I know that Mr. Catanese does guardianship work as well. I know that you do the same.
Sure.
Have you ever, had occasion to work together on guardianship matters?
No.
No. Now, can you speak at all to Mr. Catanese and his work in that regard? Is he good at it?
I'm going to I believe that he is, but I don't have firsthand experience with that. But the courts are generally fairly selective in who they appoint to represent people who are alleged to be incapacitated. And I know Joe's been doing it for a period of years, and I don't believe that the courts would continue to appoint him if they felt that his services were less than adequate and or, quite frankly, less than good.
Right, so he has a good reputation, you would say, for this type of work?
I believe he does.
You mentioned the police are, a sophisticated organization here in New Brunswick, and I know that the recent crime numbers just came out, and there's basically an increase in violent crime across the board, with the exception of murder. So that means more robberies, armed robberies, and more assaults with guns and with knives. Do you know what the police are doing about this increase? Have they been able to explain it, or is there a strategy devised to counteract that?
As you know, the numbers just came out, so we're taking a hard look at them now, and we're in the process of analyzing and reviewing them and see which strategies need to be adjusted accordingly. What the police have been doing is increasing manpower, as you know, and looking for better ways of deployment and more efficient ways of deployment as well. But we're in the process of analyzing and reacting to those numbers as we speak.
Okay. I want to ask about the criminal justice system. You know it well. You're an attorney, and obviously you're a very experienced mayor. The leader of the Democrat Party and the leader of the sheriff's office for a long time was Joe Spicuzzo. He just spent a little over 2 years in jail for selling jobs on the force, basically, for bribes. And a lot of people are upset that he only spent 2 years in jail. They think that that was way too short. And considering, if New Brunswick police locked somebody up for drug possession, they might very well go away for longer than the sheriff did. And we also had the situation with the water utility with Mr. O'Rourke is pled guilty. He's about to take a plea deal for a 3-year sentence. Who knows how much of that he'll serve. Do you think that's fair? Do you think we have a fair criminal justice system when connected people like that are getting light sentences for serious crimes and the rest of us are kind of subject to long prison sentences for less?
Look, the criminal justice system is not perfect, and anybody who believes that it is would just simply be wrong. But it is the best system that's out there, and as all systems, it's comprised of individuals who are given the opportunity to make decisions. In the Joe Spicuzzo instance, I couldn't tell you if it's fair or not fair. I don't know in detail all of the things that he's alleged to have done. I'm not familiar with the exact specifics as we speak with what he was convicted of or pled guilty to. I do know that his sentence was rendered shorter than it was intended to do, but nevertheless there's a program that he applied for. There are certain criteria that need to be met, and it needs to be reviewed by a judge, and from the accounts that I read, he met the criteria. The representatives of the program did not object to his entry into this intensive supervision program. I don't know what Joe Spicuzzo's health conditions are, whether or not there was any real advantage to him being in prison or any detriment to the prison or the system itself, much less the former sheriff. So in this instance, not knowing all the details, I can't say whether it was fair or unfair, but there is a system. The system went through the process, and a judge made a decision. And it's easy sometimes to sit on a sideline and say it's fair, it's unfair, but unless and until someone takes the time to fully understand it, and I'm not going to do that because I've got other things I need to worry about with my time. I'm content to know that the system works, just like when Joe Spicuzzo was denied parole last time. And again, go through all the details and say, well, why was he denied parole? Should he have gotten parole? Was that a fair decision? It's not my decision
not
to
at the
make.
forefront.
I have enough decisions to make in the course of a day.
Well, how about Ed O'Rourke, who ran the water treatment plant for a long time, basically covered up that people should have been boiling their water and put the public in danger. You think a 3-year is an acceptable plea deal? You think a judge should approve that, and that should be?
I'm not opposed to it. Again, there's a lot of reasons for why why deals are made, plea deals, and I'm not privy to the criminal justice component of the processing of this case in the details of it. So I think a 3 years, look, 3 years in jail or some portion thereof is a significant penalty. And in the absence of any harm to the public that anyone is aware of as a result of his, I think probably moderates the potential sentencing, but nevertheless, it certainly doesn't justify or support the actions or inactions that he took.
Okay. So yeah, I want to talk a little more about the water utility. I know there have been a lot of changes there, but I also know that you had knowledge of the problems there significantly before the public. Your business administrator said that when the EPA contacted you with the results of the sanitary survey, that basically indicated all these violations, this whole sort of cover-up operation that Mr. O'Rourke was running. You found out about that shortly thereafter. He brought it to your attention, so he says. That would be August 30th.
Could you repeat that again?
Yeah, on August 30th, the EPA sent the water director at the time, Frank Marasha, the results of a sanitary survey that confirmed that there had been falsification of records, that there had been major inadequacies in the documentation, and basically that something was really, really wrong. Your business administrator says he shared that with you. He doesn't recall if he shared it with the council. That would be an August 30th letter. The public did not find out about this cover-up until November 13th. So how do you justify keeping that quiet and also keeping Mr. O'Rourke on the payroll for the months of September and October of 2013?
I don't recall an allegation of falsification of records at that time. I remember the EPA indicating that there were some deficiencies in the operation or the facilities of the water treatment plant. At that time, we were still working with the DEP in their review of what was going on in the city with the water utility, and there was no then concern about the quality of water, that the report was all about past conditions, and to put out a public notice prematurely when we were still gathering information would have potentially created an unnecessary alarm, but also would have been less than fully apprised the public as to exactly what was going on as we were going through a detailed analysis and investigation with the DEP, which we knew was going to be coming out shortly.
Okay, and so why did you keep Ed O'Rourke on the payroll?
As I said, I don't recall there were allegations in the EPA report that there was falsification of records.
Okay. But so around the time you did take action and the public was notified by the DEP, that'd be November 6th and 13th, what was your reaction when you learned that there was falsification of records? I mean, did you the public was put in danger. These are citizens that you're entrusted to protect. How did this whole thing make you feel?
Pissed off.
Yeah. And I guess what did you do? What was your action that you took?
Well, we suspended Ed O'Rourke. We revamped the procedures that were to be used in these instances, so that there was greater redundancy in the testing procedures. And then we worked closely with the DEP about restructuring the water utility, including conducting both a personnel assessment and a facilities assessment, and coming up with long-range plans for short-range and long-range plans for both.
Okay. And so in the November 6th action order, it used the word cover-up. It said that that New Brunswick covered up, water quality, things.
Well, it did use the word cover-up, yes.
Yeah. Do you agree that there was a cover-up?
I agree that Ed O'Rourke falsified documents, and to the extent that that is a description for cover-up, then there was a cover-up. Ed O'Rourke is an agent, or was an agent of the city as a time. As rules of agency work, the entity, agents for the city, agents for an entity, bind that entity. So in that instance, there was an agent of the city that falsified documents and reports, and basically, to use your phrase and the DEP's phrase, covered up those false documents or the information that he was supposed to provide. And as an agent for the city, I don't think it's inappropriate to say that the city covered it up in that instant. But that should not imply that anybody other than Mr. O'Rourke covered up anything.
Gotcha. So, if there was a cover-up, what did you do to find out if people were harmed? You know, because obviously if people are covering things up, you know, you've got to dig extra harder to find it if people were harmed. What did your administration do to find out if people were harmed?
We sent out a public notice and detailed what happened and explained in it the types of reactions people would have to the information that was found through the DEP's review, and that if they experienced any of those situations or conditions, or wanted to have more information, or were in a category of were more likely to have some problems if they were exposed to the issues that were involved with the water, that there were phone numbers for them to call. And I'm not aware of anyone calling.
Okay. So a
and
lot
that notice, by the way, it wasn't just a public notice that goes in a newspaper or on radio.
It was mailed
to
every customer
of the city's water utility, not just in New Brunswick, but in surrounding communities as well.
Okay, so people in New Brunswick can't help but think about New Brunswick when we see the coverage of what's going on in Flint, Michigan, right now, where there was a cover-up that resulted in serious harm to the public. Tell me why New Brunswick is different. Why why do you think that didn't happen here, or why do you think that what was done here was better?
Well, in the New Brunswick matter, there's one individual, and while there was indication that there was the presence of one particular thing, and I don't remember the scientific name of it, Charlie, there was really no indication that the water was bad. And that's a difference. In Flint, Michigan, there's proof positive that there's lead in the water, and that it's tested positively for that, and that necessarily has a harmful effect. In New Brunswick, that hasn't existed to any large extent. You have to bear in mind something. You and I are drinking city water right now with our coffees. I drink city water every day. My entire family drinks city water every day. You look at the department heads in the city, most of the employees are New Brunswick residents. They drink city water every day. This isn't a callous group of people that sit there and say, hey, let's see what we can do to create mischief with our water utility, or that are so non-caring that whatever happens with the water utility. You have a group of people who are not only dedicated to their job, but they're dedicated to the community and they're dedicated to their families. They're not going to put their families, friends, neighbors, residents in harm's way. So I think that's the biggest distinction, that you have a caring administration, that you know, when we learn of a problem, we fix it.
The state didn't take over New Brunswick.
No, it did not. As a matter of fact, the state, the DEP, has commended us on a number of occasions because of our reaction and corrective action that we've taken since then. And while they were very concerned about the problems that we had, and rightly so, I think that they were very impressed with our attempts to get us to where we need to be.
Okay. So you said there was only one person involved in this. Do you think that any of the blame should fall on the acting water director, your business administrator, who was in charge of the utility for 5+ years, and during that time there was a lot of, you know, deferred maintenance, things that weren't being fixed? Do you think any of the responsibility lies with that, you know, the system failing more so than Ed O'Rourke?
No, I think that if there's blame to be put on this that goes beyond Ed O'Rourke, I think it's a team effort. And there were a lot of improvements that were made to the water utility during that time period, and so there were some $21 million, if I remember the numbers correctly, that were spent in the water utility over the past 10 years on improvements. But what we realized is that putting our faith in one individual was a bad thing to do. And you know, you hire people and you work with people that you trust. And in my wildest dreams, I would never have suspected that there were going to be false reports submitted. There was no reason to believe it. There was no indication that would happen. Ed O'Rourke had been a trusted employee in the water utility for 25+ years, probably closer to 30. But we learn from experience, and the experience tells us that we need redundancy in that. We need to be able to make sure that not only is the person who's testing trusted, but in the events our trust is misplaced, that there's somebody else who double checks that. That's not a decision of the acting water utility. That was a team decision that was made based upon the information we had at the time.
Okay. Tell me, do you see parallels between this situation and the situation with Richard Rowe, the sergeant who basically, you know, was...
I do.
Yeah, there was no supervision for him, so he was able to get away with this.
Well, there was supervision, but it may not have been as intense as it should have been. But I see a parallel. Yeah,
so when you say the city learns from its mistakes, are there other places where you're looking to put redundancy or supervision because they're vulnerable to this type of, you know, putting your faith all in one person?
I think those are two instances that jump out that, you know, said we need to revamp the system.
Okay, and so now there is supervision, or there is redundancy.
Where?
With both with the IA and with the
Yes,
water
there
utility.
is. Yes, there is.
Okay, so like for instance with the water utility, who's supervising to make sure? You contracted out.
We have both. Well, we do that as well. You know, we do some testing outside, but you have two licensed operators now, both who are familiar with the testing processes that need to take place. We started out with Frank Marasha and hired a second licensed operator, so both knew exactly what could happen in the absence and both reviewed it. So there's greater emphasis that's placed on the supervisor meaning the water utility director, to make sure that the tests that are done are adequate. Those reports that are submitted are reviewed before they go out. There's a monthly report, I believe, that goes out to the DEP, which, by the way, those documents are reviewed as well by the DEP. And during Ed O'Rourke's tenure, all of those reports were indicated that things were fine. And the DEP comes in and takes a look at those documents and runs their own tests on at least an annual basis. And reviews the city's records, and there was no indication at that time that Ed was falsifying documents either. So there is some state oversight. It's not intense, but it does serve as a audit would be much too strong a word. A small double check to make sure. So.
Okay, and how about with internal affairs? So now there's a captain that supervises it, or how?
Well, there was always a superior officer that was in charge of it, but now it's a much more direct oversight, and we have 3 people assigned to IA, so it's not just one person, and they collaborate and work together to make sure that files are reviewed to a conclusion, and there are reporting mechanisms to talk about how old they are, what's happened to them, status updates, conclusions, and then those documents are the entire report is reviewed at the end by our superior officer.
So just on the topic of police, you agree with the police and the police union that they should be wearing body cameras?
I think body cameras are a good thing.
Yeah.
But I think that we need to work out the details as to how they're to be used, and more importantly, what is it that how the police can safeguard privacy rights while using body cameras. It is a little bit more intrusive than, let's say, a motor vehicle camera. And the motor vehicle camera, shows only what the vehicle shows, and it only shows it at certain times. The body camera, as I understand it, is on all the time, and whatever the police officer sees during the course of a day is now on video. What's the rights of the public to be free from public scrutiny of what a police officer observes during the course of a day? So, police officer is asking somebody questions about what they saw or what they didn't see. Is that something that that individual wants to have reviewed by the public? Are they likely to give complete statements as to what they saw, knowing that everybody will know what it is they said? What happens if a police officer is just walking down the street and whatever is seen in front of him now becomes available for public?
I think they do have the switch, on and off switch, and there's a directive telling them, when to use it and when not to.
It does, but in the background, there's a whole lot of potential things that may not be for public edification.
Yeah. So, do you agree with the Attorney General's office that these videos should be kept secret, until conclusion of all criminal proceedings, and even perhaps after?
Well, it kind of defeats the purpose.
I think so too.
Yeah. So I think that's a safe mechanism if you want to have information, but part of the beauty of body cameras is it answers a lot of questions for the public as to what really happened. I mean, that's one of the biggest issues that we have in instances. One party says something, the other party says something else, and whether we ever really know the truth remains to be seen. So video becomes an important tool to describe what may really have happened. So to limit it entirely to, or to make it completely private defeats that purpose. But to just make it completely open to the public, I think creates a lot of violations of personal rights of privacy that our society, at least me personally, the big brother syndrome gets a little scary at times.
Sure. Okay. Well, I wanted to ask.
Time-wise, Charlie.
Yeah, I'm almost done.
Okay.
So I know there was the historic blizzard. We've never seen as much snow in New Brunswick history.
Correct. I
still see snow being moved around and pushed around out there. tell me how did you manage that response? I know you were not in the city.
I was not in the city, but through phone and we got some really experienced personnel that really knows how to deal with snow removal. But communication with the city administrator and other personnel in the city and with the school folks, we stayed on top of things, and then I was home the next day, and 2 days later, and was able to continue the process that our folks did a good job of.
So you left the BA in charge, and you're happy with the results, the way it was handled?
Snow removals, I'm happy with the way it was handled. Happy with the results is always an interesting term. In New Brunswick, if we get more than 10 inches of snow, it starts to get difficult because there is no place to put it. And when you get more snow in one snowfall than we generally get during the course of a season, you can bet there's even less places that we can put it. People, particularly in streets where there's no driveways, people park on the street, become frustrated, and understandably so, because they get snow pushed up against their cars and they get snowed in. They shovel themselves out, they shovel their driveways, and then the plows come again, push them back in. And oftentimes, because people say you haven't cleaned our street adequately enough, so we go back a second and a third time, and then people clear out their parking spaces only to have somebody else pull into it. So it is a frustrating time. So it is hard to be pleased with the results, knowing that it's difficult. It's just plain and simple difficult. But I'm pleased with the effort. The men and women who do snow removal for the city of New Brunswick just do a great job, and we just hope that this temperature stays up. And I make the same guarantee every year that by June 1st we will have no snow on our streets.
Okay. So two more questions. I don't mean to pry, but where were you during the storm?
I was in Florida.
In Florida, on family vacation, or just
I went to visit a friend.
visit a friend? Okay. And then the last thing I want to ask is just give you a chance to talk to all the new people who are coming to New Brunswick. The city's always growing. New people are coming. You've got the rest of your seventh term, maybe even more. What can people expect in the coming years? I saw it's possible we could get a casino in New Brunswick. Is that something you would support? What type of, what direction are you going to take the city in the next few years? And what would you say to new people here about what they can expect?
Well, there's no, people can expect that we will continue to stay on course for things that improve housing in the city of New Brunswick, that create job opportunities for people who are residents of New Brunswick, that improve their access to health care, to nutritious foods that are healthy and affordable, that will continue to try and do whatever we can to ensure that they get the best education they can possibly get, that we make the city as healthy a lifestyle, a place where a healthy lifestyle can be lived, where people can walk or bicycle, enjoy the environment, and continue to make New Brunswick a great place to be for whatever it is you want to do. And so there's no magic formula for that, but if that's the mission and the goal, every day is spent trying to make those things happen.